President Sisi arrives in Brussels to lead Egypt's delegation at the first ever Egyptian-European Union summit. Egypt dispatches its 55th aid convoy from Rafah to Gaza via the Kharm Abu Sanim border crossing. And Britain, France, Germany, the EU and Ukraine backed Trump's call for an immediate ceasefire. Good afternoon and welcome to the first transmission of the day. We start with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi arriving in Brussels to lead Egypt's delegation at the first ever Egypt-European Union summit tomorrow, October 22nd. The Egyptian president arrives at his residence in Brussels. The summit, marking a milestone in the comprehensive strategic partnership launched in March 2024, will feature meetings with senior EU officials, European leaders and the King of Belgium. Discussions will focus on political coordination, regional and international issues, economic cooperation, investment opportunities, and Egypt's strategy to combat illegal migration alongside other shared priority agendas.
And then, of course, we have the host tonight, and I just want to thank you very much. There was a reason we chose Egypt, because you were very helpful, and very, very helpful. Everybody wanted to have this, but we really thought it was appropriate, and you are a great leader. And he's a fantastic man and a fantastic general, by the way. But he's a great president, and I want to thank Egypt and all of your representatives for treating us all so well. Thank you very much.
Reuters, citing the office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has reported that Netanyahu met with the head of Egypt's General Intelligence, Major General Hassan Rashad, to discuss ways to advance U.S. President Donald Trump's plan for Gaza and reinforce the ongoing ceasefire efforts between Israel and Hamas. Earlier, the head of Egypt's General Intelligence departed for Israel to hold meetings with Israeli officials aimed at consolidating the Gaza ceasefire. Discussions also cover the entry of humanitarian aid and ways to overcome obstacles hindering the implementation of U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal. During the visit, the Egyptian intelligence chief is scheduled to meet with the U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, who is currently in Israel, for related consultations. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has arrived in Tel Aviv for his first official visit since assuming office to oversee the implementation of the Gaza ceasefire agreement. According to Israeli media, Vance will tour the U.S. coordination headquarters established to monitor the deal between Israel and Hamas. His visit, alongside those of U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and senior advisor Jared Kushner, is part of intensified American efforts to preserve the truce following recent Israeli airstrikes. Discussions in Tel Aviv are expected to address the issue of deceased detainees in Gaza. Qatar's Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani has condemned Israel's continued violations of the Gaza ceasefire, denouncing recent strikes as illegal and inhumane. He labeled Israel's actions, including attacks on a negotiating delegation, as state terrorism and criticized the international community's failure to uphold Palestinian rights. He reiterated Qatar's strong condemnation of all Israeli abuses in Gaza, emphasizing that the blockade has rendered the territory uninhabitable, and called attention to the urgent need for respect of international law and protection of civilians. Hamas leader and head of the negotiating delegation, Khalil al-Hayya, has affirmed that Hamas and Palestinian factions remain fully committed to the Gaza ceasefire agreement. He praised Gaza residents' resilience and highlighted international support, especially Egypt and President al-Sisi, as crucial for the agreement's durability. Al-Hayya stressed determination to complete the deal, including returning all the bodies despite logistical challenges, and confirmed adherence to humanitarian aid provisions, urging increased deliveries of medical supplies and winter support to meet the urgent civilian needs. Earlier, Hamas has accused Israel of consistently violating the Gaza ceasefire agreement, asserting that the movement has fully adhered to all its terms, especially by releasing all living detainees at once during the initial phase. Hamas confirmed its ongoing daily efforts to return the remains of Israeli detainees and emphasized the need to pressure Israel to fulfill its obligations under the ceasefire, ensuring the agreement is fully implemented. The Israeli government spokesperson has reaffirmed Israel's commitment to the Gaza ceasefire, emphasizing that any violation by Hamas would be met with a firm response. She also criticized recent remarks by the Canadian Prime Minister, urging him to reconsider his call for the arrest of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, describing it as an irresponsible and politically motivated statement.
والله العظيم ولا حبة رز، والله العظيم ولا حبة عدس. ما فيش أكل، ما فيش شرب، عندي بنت 2.5 صارت نص.
Egypt has dispatched the 55th aid convoy under the ZLS provision of honor from Egypt to Gaza initiative from Rafah to Gaza via the Kerem Abu Salim border crossing. The convoy carried 7,500 tons of urgent humanitarian aid. The shipment includes 240,000 food baskets, tons of flour, over 1,500 tons of medical and relief supplies, and 2,200 tons of fuel. Launched on July 27th, the initiative has delivered diverse assistance from food and medical items to fuel, coordinated by 35,000 volunteers at the Rafah border and logistical centers, supporting Gaza's population amid the ongoing crisis. The World Food Programme has said it has delivered over 538 trucks into Gaza since the ceasefire, through supplies remain far below the daily target of 2,000 tons. The WFP spokesperson, Abi Ratif, told a Geneva press briefing that only 2 crossings are currently operating, neither of which allow access to the famine-hit north. She stressed the need to open all borders points to scale up humanitarian deliveries. Gaza's government media office has said that only 986 out of 6,608 trucks have entered the Gaza Strip since the ceasefire took effect. The media office added that the convoys included 14 trucks carrying cooking gas and 28 loaded with diesel fuel for bakeries and generators. It noted that the daily average of incoming trucks does not exceed 89 compared to the 600 trucks required. The office stressed that Gaza is in urgent need of at least 600 trucks per day, including food, medical, and relief supplies. Gaza health authorities have reported that Israeli strikes have killed 80 and injured 303 Palestinians since the Gaza ceasefire took effect on October 10th. Over the past 24 hours alone, 57 were killed and 158 wounded. The overall death toll since the conflict's outbreak in October 2023 now stands at more than 68,200, with more than 170,000 injured. The United Nations has warned of a sharp escalation in settler violence during the current olive harvest season compared to the previous years. UN data shows 99 Palestinians injured and extensive damage to farmland and harvesting equipment as a result of settlers' attacks. Nearly half of those assaulted targeted olive harvesters, affecting residents of 27 villages across the West Bank governorates. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported 71 settler attacks on Palestinians and their property within just 1 week. For more analysis, we now move to Henny Saif in our newsroom. To you, Henny.
Thank you, Raham. For more analysis, we're joined from Gaza by the communication officer at the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, Ms. Ines Hamden. Ms. Hamden, welcome to Q News. Now, given that aid entry remains far below daily requirements, what are the main logistical or political barriers preventing the full delivery of humanitarian assistance into Gaza?
Thank you for having me. Maybe the main obstacle here for us is as the UNRWA is that up until now we haven't been given the green light from the Israeli side to deliver the aid and the food to the Gaza Strip. Up till now, we cannot send anything to them. We cannot deliver our trucks that have the aid, and so this is the main issue for us. And this also this leads to more logistical barriers to deliver aid to the civilians, even though that we still have things in Gaza are very bad when it comes to health and of course other fields, and so we're waiting for Israel to allow us to do our work and deliver the aid.
Mm-hmm. Well, what would you say are the most urgent humanitarian priorities right now? Is it food, fuel, medical supplies or shelter? How are these being balanced amid the shortages?
Actually, as I said, frankly, the Gaza Strip and the people there need all kinds of humanitarian aid. They need food, of course. We were talking about a famine that was declared in August, and so yeah, they need lots of food and nutrition in general, because they are getting more and more fragile. And I also want to add that we also of course need medical supplies and medicine, fuel, water, and something that's very important, we need tents and covers. This is very important also, and so yeah, these people lost their houses, and so we need this.
Mm-hmm. Well, the people in Gaza are dealing with so much right now. How is UNRWA managing the dual pressure of increasing humanitarian needs and persistent security risks, especially after the reports of renewed Israeli strikes post the ceasefire?
Going back, even if temporarily, to escalation in the Gaza Strip, this could lead to more barriers and obstacles. People there are suffering greatly, and they have lost hope because of the long war, and so yeah, they don't really have any hope right now, and the aid is some kind of hope for them. And just thinking about about further escalation, this causes them to get more disappointed. Up till now, and to this point, we cannot give or provide medical services. We cannot give them water that that they need. We cannot give them the food, and also other services like mental support, and this is one of the things that we plan to give them, and also have that they need to start schools. It is in our plan so that they get education online, and so we need a sustainable ceasefire, and so that we can start doing our part and deliver the essential aid for the people there.
Well, with all the difficulties and the challenges, Ms. Hamdan, to what extent can the international coordination through Egypt and the UN agencies improve and help with the volume and speed of aid entering Gaza in the coming weeks?
It is very important. They really need this. We need to keep up the coordination with the mediators, especially Egypt. They have really listened and responded to the humanitarian calls in the Gaza Strip, and also the international community need to play its role here. They need to make sure that the aid is delivered in a way that's enough for the people there, and they aren't getting nearly enough. And so this coordination and cooperation that guarantees, or somewhat guarantees, that we can keep up with with delivering the aid, and even scattering the aid across all the Gaza Strip. They need services, medical services, environmental. They need food, education, mental support, and so all this needs to be easy for us to do, and they need to work from their part to make it easy for us to do it. And so yes, they need to respond urgently to all the calls and to deliver everything across the whole Gaza Strip.
With reports of skirmishes and small breaches of ceasefire, how safe and secure are UNRWA personnel and other humanitarian and international organizations feel in light of all these circumstances?
This, of course, causes or leads to huge risks for the organizations that like the UNRWA, and it also causes risks for the people. We have seen that there were destructions in some of the buildings really that are related to the UNRWA, and so yes, as I said before, we need this phase to keep going and to hold up, so that we can move to other phases and to send the humanitarian aid, because a ceasefire actually reflects on lots of things.
Looking ahead, Ms. Hamdan, what steps must the international community take to ensure and guarantee that humanitarian access, the reconstruction, accountability mechanisms move beyond the temporary relief towards sustainable recovery?
It is very important to have guarantees for stability there. We need a permanent ceasefire, and then we need they need to allow unhindered access aid to the Gaza Strip, and UNRWA needs to start playing its role, or to be able to play its role to deliver everything. As I said before, we need also to start providing them with so much services that they in dire need of.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Gaza, that was Ms. Ines Hamdan, the communication officer at the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East. Thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. Now we go back to Rehem Morsi in our studio. Rehem.
Thank you so much, Henny, for that interview. We move on to the U.S. President Donald Trump that has said allied countries have offered to assemble a large military force and, if necessary, enter Gaza. But he told partners that deployment is not yet warranted. He expressed hope that Hamas will do the right thing. Yet he warned that if Hamas fails to comply, it would face a swift, violent and brutal end. The Palestinian cabinet has urged urgent international intervention to halt ongoing settler attacks against Palestinian farmers in the occupied West Bank. It warned that these assaults form part of a broader Israeli plan aimed at undermining Palestinian resilience and displacing them from their lands.
We're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death.
The Iranian government spokesperson has reaffirmed our country's commitment to peace, stressing that genuine negotiations must be based on mutual respect rather than imposed conditions. Speaking at a press conference following the full expiry of the UN Security Council Resolution 2231, she said Tehran has always supported dialogue, emphasizing that talks cannot succeed if one side dictates the terms. She noted that Iran's readiness to engage with any state acting on the basis of equality and respect, affirming that they always seek peace and will defend their nation's rights. Iran's vice president has reaffirmed that the European Troika activation of the snapback mechanism is illegal, stressing Tehran's readiness to counter any aggression economically or militarily. He asserted that the government has no concerns about managing the national economy, emphasizing strong preparedness across all state institutions. The Iranian vice president also warned that Iran's armed forces stand fully ready to deliver a decisive strike should the country face any form of attack. Moving on to Sudan, where Civil Aviation Authority has announced the gradual reopening of Khartoum International Airport for domestic flights starting tomorrow, following completion of technical and operational preparations. The airport recently handled its first commercial flight since the outbreak of war over 2 years ago, marking a key step to restoring normalcy and reconnecting Sudan with the region and world. The United Nations has urged an immediate halt to hostilities in Sudan, calling for the protection of civilians and unimpeded humanitarian access. The UN warned that ongoing violence continues to endanger civilians and trigger new waves of displacement across the country. The Kremlin has said that no date has been set for a possible summit between Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump. A statement came after a CNN report claimed a preparatory meeting between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had been put on hold. Kremlin officials denied any postponement, saying discussions on the timing of the summit remains ongoing. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said he and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio agreed to maintain regular phone contact. The announcement followed yesterday's call held after President Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump instructed them to coordinate preparations for a forthcoming U.S.-Russia summit in Budapest. Lavrov also added that Russia's conditions for peace in Ukraine remain unchanged since August summit between U.S. and Russia. Britain, France, Germany, the EU and Ukraine have jointly backed U.S. President Donald Trump's call for an immediate ceasefire along current front lines in Ukraine. In the joint statement, they affirmed that they strongly support President Trump's position that the fighting should stop immediately. That comes as Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are set to meet in Budapest to discuss the proposal, which aims to launch peace talks based on existing battle lines. French President Emmanuel Macron has declared that only Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky can negotiate territorial concessions in Ukraine. Speaking in Ljubljana, the French president emphasized that no one, including foreign leaders, has the right to decide Ukraine's territorial future. His comments came in response to a question about an upcoming meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, which aims to explore ways to end the ongoing conflict. That came as Macron reiterates that Ukraine alone should determine its own destiny and territorial integrity.
Il faudra reposer le débat. Et je me félicite que le Premier ministre ait souhaité en même temps réouvrir ce débat et que plusieurs forces syndicales et patronales aient manifesté leur envie de le reprendre.
Hardline conservative Sanae Takahashi was formally nominated as Japan's first female prime minister after securing 237 votes in the lower house and 125 in the upper house runoff against opposition leader Yoshihiko Noda. A protege of Shinzo Abe, the admirer of Margaret Thatcher, her victory marks a historic breakthrough in a male-dominated political landscape, signaling a rightward shift for Japan. Her nomination followed the Liberal Democratic Party's coalition agreement with the right-wing Japan Innovation Party. The U.S. Senate has failed for the 11th time to pass a bill approved by the House to fund the government and end the ongoing shutdown. As the government shutdown continues, food assistance benefits for millions of Americans are at risk of being cut off in November. State officials warn that recipients of food stamps could lose benefits. That comes as Pennsylvania notifies citizens that payments will stop from October 16th. Other states like New Jersey, Maryland, New York, and Texas have issued similar warnings. The United States Department of Agriculture has indicated that without federal funding, there may not be enough resources to fully cover SNAP benefits for November, potentially affecting over 40 million Americans. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin, but before we wrap up, here's a recap of the top stories making headlines this hour. President Assisi arrives in Brussels to lead Egypt's delegation at the first ever Egypt-European Union summit. Egypt dispatches its 55th aid convoy from Rafah to Gaza via Kharm Abu Said border crossing. Britain, France, Germany, the EU and Ukraine backs Trump's call for an immediate ceasefire. For more stories and live updates, follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, at TikTok, at QNewsEGY. From all of us here, thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Qnews.